Dundalk's Radio and Television People is an attempt to record the background of the commercial activities, both manufacturing and distribution, of television and radio in Dundalk. Research located a large number of distributors of radios and televisions and the existence of manufacturers such as GEC and Reynolds Electronics in Dundalk and Dunleer. We hope to highlight the successful existence of these commercial entities and talk with family members of the people who established them and to people who worked in there and recall the stories from bygone days. Part 1. Slideshow presentation in the County Museum, Dundalk. In this, the first of the series, we will hear contributions from Tom Lamb, Frank Byrne, Des O'Loughlin and Damien Halpenny, who talks about GEC Dunleer and Reynolds Electronics Dundalk. The presenter is Frank O'Callaghan. Alan Byrne introduces the evening's proceedings.
The aerial for Dundalk FM's 5-mile transmission area was moved around the town since we began in 2002. It was on the top of the Imperial Hotel at one stage. It was on top of the Carrick Road Town End floodlight in Oriel Park at one stage, and more recently on top of the Gateway Hotel. And that's thanks to local people who supported the station, Mr. Peter Quinn, Des Downing and Dennis Williams. But standing on top of the Gateway Hotel, which I've done a good few times, because that's where our transmitter was, and if the transmitter went down, I had to hawk it down to Audiocom 53 Park Street and hope that Des would be able to repair the fan pretty quickly, which he always did. He was brilliant. Yeah, that's no charge for that, Des. Anyway, looking at standing at the top of the Gateway Hotel, you get a fine view of Blackrock, Hagerstown, Merhevenamore, the centre of town, Cuchulain's Castle and beyond the Castletown River. And you also see all the TV aerials on top of the red brick houses in Pearse Park, the Domain, Parnell Park, Legion Avenue, Castletown Road, Railway Terrace. And I was thinking about the men who put up those aerials all those years ago. They were probably one of the most anticipated visits for many people in Dundalk. And the second was when they went back to fix the television and repair it. My old dad, Frank Byrne, started putting up aerials back in, can you remember? 1961, okay. I mentioned to Frank O'Callaghan that I'd love to do a programme on the radio about the TV and radio people in Dundalk, as it would be a great addition to preserving the history of the manufacturing and dealers and suppliers that provided employment for themselves, their families and a lot of people in Dundalk, and get people in to talk on the radio about GEC and Reynolds Electronics, and to those people who started their working life putting up aerials. So Frank thought for a minute and he said,
no. I said no, definitely not.
Yeah, and then he said, leave it with me. All right. So if every job is 5% inspiration and 95% perspiration, please welcome 95% of tonight's presentation, Frank O'Callaghan.
Thanks very much, Alan. I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, I did say no. And the reason I said no was I knew nothing about the subject. And you might find out now that I was right. I know nothing about the subject. But it's not that I haven't done presentations before, I have. But this is completely different. And I have to say this is a big challenge because this is the first time I've ever done anything about where every single member of the audience knows much more about the subject than I do. So you're going to have to be patient with me and not boo me or throw me off the stage. So I want to tell you a few things that's going to happen tonight. Let me set the scene here for our listeners. We're recording here in the County Museum in Dundalk, which is located in a restored 18th century warehouse. It's a simply magnificent building. It's a credit to all that are concerned. And we have a great gathering of people here whose families, or indeed yourselves, were involved in the television industry, whether it was in the manufacturing, in GEC or Reynolds, or on the sale of the product throughout the town. And in the course of the next 30 or 40 minutes, we're going to cover all of those things. I'd like to explain the format to you. We have a series of slides here, and on each slide then we'll have a conversation or a question for somebody in the audience. It'll work itself out. And how would I like to classify this? I've given this a bit of thought, and I'd like to classify it as a tribute to all the people who worked in this industry and in this segment of the economy in this town of ours over the years. And you are the representatives of those people. So please take from all of us here a tribute to your family, your parents, the people who worked in these factories. Well done to you all. I hope you enjoy the evening. We'll have a look now at just a few acknowledgements to the staff of the County Museum here, because they do everything we ever ask them. They're very good to us. To Nigel Curtin and the staff of the Loud Reference Library, because every time any of us, not just me, do research on subject, the doors are thrown open and we get great attention from them. And I want to thank the contributors to the various programmes, and that's a lot of you people. We've already made a number of recordings. The presentation content will cover the arrival of television services into Ireland, the people who manufacture the product in the area, and all the people who sold televisions and serviced them in our town. First of all, a few pieces of information about the arrival of televisions into Ireland. If my information is right, the BBC arrived into Northern Ireland in 1953, but it reached a much bigger audience with the opening of a new transmitter in Divis in about 1955. UTV, or Ulster Television, came in on the 31st of October 1959, and radio television began on the 1st of January 1926, while regular television broadcasts started on New Year's Eve 1961. And I understand that at some stage the station was called 2RN, but I'm not an expert at that, so I just have it there because a wiser man than me told me about it. First of all, we had two radio and television manufacturers in the locality. We had the GEC in Dunleer and Pat Redlands Electronics in Dundalk. And we have a number of people here tonight who worked in those facilities, and we're going to have a chat with them about as we go along. First of all, a couple of things about the GEC, which was located, as I said, in Dunleer. We did an interview with a number of people, as far as I can remember. It was Frank Byrne, Tom Lamb, Des O'Loughlin, and they covered such subjects as the employment levels, the employment job details, wage rates, product range, material supply base, which is very interesting, where the material came from, and some of the financial implications associated. And Dundalk Democrat had an advertisement in 1959, I think it's in the name of R.K. O'Neill's, where GEC advertised the range of the products. And here's a photograph I got from Des O'Loughlin in recent times, the back of a GEC television. And when you look at that, you can see the skill levels that are required to put this sort of thing together. And Alan mentioned there happening with the televisions, they would break, and then they had to be sent back in for repair, and a lot of work had to be done. And we'll cover all those things. I found this book here, which is very interesting, by a gentleman named Fintan Harman. He classified it was sunshine and laughter all the way. And it was about people who worked in the GEC. And it covered a whole lot of people, like from Dundalk, like it covered Pat O'Hagan, Matt O'Hanlon, it mentioned Seamus Fox. And it was well worth the read. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, first of all, to Tom Lamb, who's sitting up here behind me. Every question tonight is not about the black and white of television. It's about the times we lived in and what happened. So, Tom, you made a great point about when you went back to the region, or to the technical college, the technical school in Chapel Street. And you told me about the subjects that were there. Can you tell me some more about the subjects you went through?
It was called the technical school at the time. It was a 2-year course, post-primary school. And I was asked, did I want to go to secondary school or technical school? I said, all the boys are going to technical school, I'll go with them. And we done metalwork, woodwork, mechanical drawing, magnetism, electricity, general science, Irish, English, and mathematics.
All in the old technical school. Yeah. And there was two names that came to mind. One of them was called Kieran Courter, and the other was Pete McCourt. Did they ring a bell with you?
Yeah, Kieran Coulter done the practical woodwork, and Peter McCourt, Pete they called him, he done the woodwork and the mechanical drawing as well.
I think Coulter, the man, he was from Dunleer, wasn't he?
Yes, yes, he was from Dunleer.
Yeah. And we also spoke about the money you earned. It was big money at the time, 1960 for a 16-year-old guy. £1.10 per week. And the great story was you were able to tell me what you could do with that money, going to pictures and just relate to that.
Well, I thought I was very wealthy. It was four pence to go. That was the cheapest seats in the Magnet, the Adelphi or Park Street Picture House. There was also a picture house, the Oriel, in Market Street, where the Dundalk Credit Union is now. And it was 4 pence. if you're taking, say, someone with you, you went to the eightpennies or...
Do you mean a young lady?
Yeah, well, you can say that. And in the magnet there was double seats, which was very important. Two people could sit in the one seat. And then upstairs was, I think it was 12 pence upstairs.
There was something I read somewhere that you were not allowed to talk at work. You weren't allowed to talk. Was that true?
It was frowned upon, and everyone used to talk to one another, but you had to keep it down, you know, to keep it quiet.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Frank Byrne.
Yes, Frank, yeah.
I have a couple of questions for you, Frank, from your time in GEC. The conversation came up about a gentleman apprentice who were apprentices at the time. Were they paid, Frank?
Oh, okay. The gentleman apprentice that I knew of was Martin McCourt. Martin, who was the big boss in GEC. There are some people here would have known about him, but he came from a wealthy background, and he didn't need to get paid, but he needed to find out the trade levels and so forth. So he was one. Who else was an apprentice? Did we know another one, Tom?
Gentleman
Apprentice, yes. I thought we mentioned another one. Martin McCourt is the only one I knew now.
Yeah.
And tell me about something about promotion.
Well, I was in the television section of it. And I think off the top of my head there were about 70 people all over in the television end of it, considering there were about 1,800 people working in GEC in the late 60s, early 70s. Promotion, I think, well, what I knew of it, I never got too much promotion, but if you were in the union as a shop steward and you kind of didn't rock the boat too much, you could get promoted that way. But I suppose there was other promotion based on people's skills and levels of skills and knowledge as well.
Des O'Loughlin is with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So Des, I'm definitely going to put you on the spot, Des. Tell me a little bit about what you did up in the factory.
Well, my job was to put the chassis into the back of the TV set and wire it and connect the tuner to the chassis and connect the coils to the chassis, and from there on then it went to a lady opposite me. Her name was Bridget McMahon, and she would align the tuner with the chassis, and then it went on to final picture test up at the top of the TV shop. So that was my job basically, and I did it in 1968 when I was 16, and I stayed in GEC for a year.
And Des, you made the point to me about 1960 that there was an import duty of 37.5% on televisions. And was that the reason why televisions were actually manufactured in Ireland?
Probably was. There was high tariffs on it at the time, and I think it was more economic to assemble them in Ireland than import them directly, you know.
And of course there was the residential fire. You remember
that was a rumour that went around the factory because there was two of us asked to come in on a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday to unpack a load of TVs and put them on soak test. Well, it didn't happen regular or anything like that. It was just a one-off. But we had to put all the televisions on test to make sure there was no problems with them.
Just to ensure that if they went out to another customer, they were in working order.
Well, I suppose they didn't want any fires or anything like that happening, you know. But it was a rumour that went around at the time that one of them had caught fire. But whether that was true or not, I'm not quite sure.
So you've used the word rumour 3 times, Des. So I'm going to put you on the spot for here's another rumour. There was a rumour that you were late for work one day. Tell me what happened.
Oh, right. Well, we used to get a lift up and down with a man called Pat Crilly. Pat used to work in the TV shop as well. He'd come back from America and he was a fault finder. And Pat used to take us up and down in his Ford Cortina every morning. There was 4 of us in the car, but one day we got a puncture and we were about 20 minutes changing the tyre and getting into the factory. And at the time, the personnel manager was waiting for us at the gate, and we were told to collect our cards and come back up and sign out, and we were all sent home. But then I went back to bed, and at 11 o'clock that morning, my mother came up to me and says, Des, there's a man down at the front door. Would you ever get up and come down and talk to him? And I went down anyway, and I was told that if I came into the shop at that stage, because there was an incident where the lady beside me who used to do my job was off sick, and there was no television production happening at all that day because we were missing, and I'd been sent home. So I was told that night that I would be given a double bonus and full day's bonus if I came in and started the production again. That's what happened.
You went in a happy man.
It was nice to get back in anyway, but it was just what happened.
Just one of those things. Thanks very much. We move on now to Pat Reynolds Electronics. We interviewed Terry Sloan and Damien Halpenny and Frank Byrne. And before we enter a few wee questions with the gentlemen, here's some of the things that came out of the interview. The factory locations for Reynolds Electronics in 1971 was in Bachelor's Walk. In 73, they moved up to where Tesco are now, they're the small factory up there. In 76, they moved down to the old RF Martin site in Jocelyn Street. In 79, I'm not sure whether they were paid bonuses for moving about or not, but they moved to the sorting office in Pierce Park, which was the old Holidays factory at the time. And then they got their dream. They got an IDA factory on the bypass in 82. And at that time, it employed about 80 people. I believe there was a place in Dublin, but I don't know anything about it. And then, unfortunately, the factory closed in the mid-1980s. So I was going to ask Frank tonight to tell us a little bit about Pat Reynolds. And there's two things about him. He came from Killyshandra in County Cavan, as far as I know. And he worked in the GEC, and at a particular point in time, he moved and set up his own businesses. And if I could ask a question of Frank Byrne, please. So the question to you is, in 1971 in Bachelor's Walk, what was the product that was made, and how many were made in the period of time, and how much did they actually cost retail price?
71, I joined Reynolds in 71. There was 5 people working in it at that point in time. Pat Reynolds was my boss in GEC, so I came as a kind of production supervisor and so forth. We were making a wee radio, some people might remember it, a Joy radio, a little small, about the size of a cigarette packet. And the story goes that Pat Reynolds was sent to Far East, he was working in GEC at the time, to get a new product range. And he brought back some of these little radios, and it wasn't approved of by the powers that be in GEC, so he set himself up in business and manufactured them. They came in kits of 5,000. They came from Singapore. Just all the components were loosed, all put into the printed circuit board and tuned and realigned and so forth. And we got up to making about 100 a day. They were quite easy to produce, but some of them were faulty and so forth, so we had people to repair them. But it was a Joy known as a Joy radio.
And how much did they cost, actually?
Something tells me they were retailing at around £5, something less than that. £5 was the target price to keep them under.
Were you involved in the actual setting up of the factory?
No, I joined maybe 6 months after.
Okay, right.
Pat Reynolds and a man called Eugene McCabe were the two that got involved. Eugene was an engineer. He later taught in RTC as a lecturer.
Okay. Damien is beside you there, Damien Halpenny. Damien, you were a long employee of Reynolds. What sort of jobs did you do up there?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I started as a support technician, which is what I did before that in GEC. Then as after sales, service department was growing quite a bit, so I did a stint in that as after sales so-called manager anyway. And then eventually, I suppose, we started developing our own products, so I moved into the lab.
We had a good conversation one evening, and you mentioned the RTC. That opened in about 1969 or 1970. My question was, did they produce appropriate qualified people for you? What sort of person came out of the...
Oh, they did. I mean, the people from the RTC that did electronics would have absolutely no problem getting placements because they were first class, you know.
So the RTC did play a big part in the development of industry in Dundalk over the following years.
Of course, because before that, the only formal training you could get would be in Bolton Street or Kevin Street, and even those courses were more to do with radio officers, etc. So a lot of people came that route. But aside from that, City and Guilds in Chapel Street was your only way you could get some theory.
Okay. One last question to hear. I hope I'm putting you on the spot with this one. But there was two types of television, or two brands. There was the Nordmende and there was Reynolds. Is that right?
There was Nordmende and there was Telefunken.
As well.
When Pat went to... Pat and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tom Lamb here, they went over to Germany, to Bremen specifically, in the case of Nordmende, and came back with the agency for Nordmende and Telefunken.
Okay. And out in the reception area there, I see a television manufactured by Reynolds, but on the back of it, it says manufactured in Korea. How was that an old...
That's right. Like if you were taking a shipment, you couldn't produce 14-inch black and white in Ireland with the wage costs, you know, so they were taken in. They were just, if you bought enough of them, I'd say they'd even brand them for you. You know, in fact, the same thing happened in various places. Like when I was in Nordmende, I seen televisions going down the line with Bush on them, you know, so it was, that was towards the end when you had a Euro chassis, you know.
Did you spend some time over in Nordmende?
Well, you see, as support technician, we had to, each year for new products coming out, we had to do a number of seminars around the country. So you go over, bone up on the particular product that was going that year, whether everything from televisions with auto searching to all the way to VCR eventually and all that sort of stuff. So the only way would be to go over, get the training there. Also, you'd get the sort of documentation you needed, etc. Take it back and hold maybe 4 or 5 seminars in September to get the trade. First of all, let them know what was happening, but also to give the technicians a day's seminar.
So Damien, the whole process was fairly elaborate and fairly advanced for its time, was it?
Oh, yes. Like, I mean, the school in Germany was very good. You know, it was, everything was laid on for you. Like, every minute you spent there was productive, you know what I mean? You learned a lot in 2 weeks or whatever it took, you know.
Typical Germans. I'd just like to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, about the Nordmende range of products, because the original company was set up, it was called Radio N. Mende GmbH. It was founded in 1923 by Otto Hermann Mende in Dresden. But following the destruction of the plant during the bombing raids in 1945, his son Martin Mende created a new company in Bremen in 1947. The name was subsequently changed to Nordmende, and the company became one of the prominent German manufacturers of radios, televisions, tape recorders, and radio players in the 1950s and the 1960s.
Yes, it was called Nordmende because there were the Mendes from the north.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Nord.
Yeah,
you caught me out on that. Well done.
One of the places I visited where they made radios in this particular plant, there were still holes filled in the roof from the bombing time, you know.
In this, the first part in the series, Dundalk's radio and television people, we heard from Tom Lamb, Frank Byrne, Des O'Loughlin and Damien Halpenny. A special word of appreciation to Jim Curley, who controlled the PowerPoint slides, and thanks to Brian Walsh and the staff of the County Museum Dundalk for bringing out the television exhibits and facilitation of the venue. Coming up in part 2 of the presentation, we will hear from Noel and Aidan McCann, Stephanie Comiskey, Nee McCann, Rory Hall, Frank Byrne, Tom Lamb and John Fox and his sister Margaret Gamble, Nee Fox. The series, Dundalk's Radio and Television People, was researched and presented by Frank O'Callaghan and recorded and edited by Alan Byrne.